Shabbat Shalom. Over the summer, as many of you know, I was traveling through France with my family. We went there instead of Israel. But Israel, so to speak, came to us. And my brother's family were also there. In any case, he had neighbors from Israel who came to visit us in France and spend time with us. And as they spent the first few days with us, they began to tell us about their experience on October 7th. And they lived in the north of Israel, not completely in the north, but towards the north. And they spoke about how in those first few days afterwards, when there were still Hamas militants in the south and the border was breached and there was panic everywhere and nobody knew if Hezbollah would try the same thing up north. And so they created neighborhood watches, which they naturally also took part in, and they joined the neighborhood watch. And that there was one specific night where they said it was middle of the night, and this couple, they're in their 50s. He's a graphic designer, though he is also a Taekwondo instructor, and she's a tour guide. And they're sitting in their car. He said, that light of the street lamp is just coming into the car, this bare street light. And they think, what are we doing here? How could we repel any attack? The two of us sitting in our little car, if anything happened, what are we doing here? And that somehow as they were talking, and they talked about their views and how much they had hardened in their understanding of the conflict and what they had to do to defend themselves, everything on the future. And they said, like many Israelis I've heard, we became too soft. We have to become a nation like Sparta, they said. We have to become a nation of warriors. No pity. But then there were others in the group who were saying, well, if you do this, then you become like the terrorists. You can't go to that place. And there was this ongoing argument. This is happening while this was the end of the summer, that period where Hezbollah and Iran said they're going to attack, and every day we're wondering, is this the day when they're going to attack? And the whole country was on edge, and the Jewish people were on edge. And really, here my family was, with my parents, my brother and his family, and these other Israelis, who were all Israelis who were taking refuge for a few months outside the country. And all these arguments were happening. And we kept coming back to is, with this graver threat then, and this week it's even more so, of a wider war, how'd you go to war when you're so divided as a country? When you have so many internal conflicts? And how do you face powerful enemies when there's all this discord coming from within, a complete lack of trust? And so when I was talking to them and they talked about a nation of Sparta, I said, well, from my understanding of our tradition, it's true, as one of my teachers in rabbinical school said, we're not a pacifistic religion, and the Torah does speak a lot and commands in going to war and documents wars. And yet Israel was established at our founding moment to be a kingdom of priests, not a kingdom of warriors, and to be a light unto the nation. That to me is the pshat, the simple reading of the Torah. And it doesn't mean you don't defend yourself against very real threats, and you be creative in doing so. Saw this week. King David was a poet and a warrior. But this question, how do you keep being compassionate and moral and ethical while being strong as well? And not losing sight of the humanity of others, even when they've lost sight of your humanity. How do you fight a just war, staying aligned with your highest values? There's an article I read 10 days ago in the aftermath of the horrific killing of Hirsch and the other hostages. And it was by an American-Israeli rabbi, or I should say an Israeli-American, because he's born to American parents in Israel, Misha Tzion, someone I know. Orthodox, but he's part of that Jerusalem community. For any of you who've been to Jerusalem, were very Anglo-Orthodox, but very open to the same kind of Jewish ideals and values that we talk about in our synagogues here. And he was invited to a television studio in Tel Aviv. And they asked him, and they saw his kippah, and in Israel they judge you by your kippah, like what kind of kippah is that? And so they looked at him and they said, well, tell us, what kind of Jew are you? He thought about it. He's like, how are these Israeli newscasters going to understand what kind of Jew he is? So he said, I am the Rachel and Jonathan Poland Goldberg kind of Jew. And they immediately understood, because Israelis were also captivated by Rachel and were listening to her Torah and listening to her talk about Torah and embodying Jewish values in what she was saying. And so this article is about what does it mean to be a Jonathan and Rachel Poland Goldberg kind of Jew. So what does it mean? It means, paraphrasing his words, searching to inspire through Torah, with spirituality and dignity core values, being strong but compassionate, an authentic but generous Yiddishkeit. So how do you go to war when you're in such bad shape? And this has been in my mind for so many months. And for all the problems, 48 and 67 and 72, we were so much more united than we are now. And there was overwhelming fear, but there was also more a sense of trust in the leadership. And so last week, the way the Torah expressed it, when you men go out as a troop against your enemies, be on your guard against anything untoward. This is a JPS translation, but in the Hebrew it says, be on guard against anything ra, anything evil, anything off. So when you have evil in your midst, when you are off, how can you expect victory in the battlefield, is what the Torah is saying. And to the Torah, the examples are very, very concrete. If there's excrement in your camp, you cannot go to war. You have to make a hole. And the Midrash takes a list and expands it much further, all type of places and ways of how you keep your camp in the proper condition. And this, in fact, is really what so many of the books of the Bible are about. From their ancient viewpoint, the prophets warned the people, if you don't act properly according to God, what God says, it's not going to go well. We're not going to win our wars. There's going to be no internal cohesion. Your whole existence is based on holiness, based on God watching over you against bigger enemies, the prophet's saying. And if you're off, then your larger, more advanced enemies will win. And really, all the books of Kings are about this very fact. When the kings lost their way and the people lost their way, it didn't go well for them in any other part of their existence. And in our view, perhaps we can say that what we came back to the land of Israel was because of our 2,000-year-old dream of coming back to our ancient homeland, that story that's been rekindled this year in so many of our hearts, because of a powerful commitment to each other, that we're together in this, all of us, the Jewish people, but especially those living in Israel, commitment to each other and to communal prosperity and flourishing and to values and democracy, and to living a powerful story that's led to the vitality and creativity that we've seen throughout Israel's existence, and really giving us the strength to defeat our enemies. And over the last year, we've seen we can't take for granted that our enemies are always going to be weak and will always be 10 steps beyond them. And miracles happened. And at the end of all these precautions, the Torah says, since your God Adonai moves about in your camp to protect you and to deliver your enemies to you, let your camp be holy. Let God not find anything unseemly among you and turn away from you. And the commentator Malbim, he says, in order that you should be victorious over your enemies, if not, they will be victorious over you. That when we are right, it gives us something, a sense of special protection. And also then the Midrash continues in this way, very interesting, and it says, you don't have to be completely, you don't have to check, these are my words, you don't have to check every mezuzah, everything doesn't have to be perfect, but overall, there needs to be a health to your society, to who you are, to how you're being with each other. And then there's a direct correlation in God's providence. And then we have in this week's Parsha. And in this week's Parsha, it talks really about this powerful ritual where half the people are on one mountain, the other half are on the other. And they talk about all the blessings and curses that will come to them depending on if they follow the teachings or not. And right, blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Blessed shall you be in your comings, and blessed shall you be in your goings. Adonai will put to rout before your army the enemies who attack you. They will march out against you by a single road, but flee from you by many roads. And all the peoples of the earth shall see that Adonai's name is proclaimed over you, and they shall stand in fear of you. But if you do not, cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the country. And Adonai will let loose against you calamity, panic, and frustration in all the enterprises you undertake, so that you shall soon be utterly wiped out because of your evil doing and forsaking me. And the list of curses goes on to the end of the Parsha. And so maybe our understanding of God's providence is a little bit more complicated in our time. But no one can claim to have the answers exactly of what needs to be done. But maybe we can say that what this period before the holidays every year is about, at least in our individual and also in our communal way, that we have a period where our whole goal is to set ourselves right. Set ourselves right in our individual lives so that we can face all the challenges in our individual lives with knowing that we've returned tshuva to who we are. We've seen all the things that are unseemingly and removed them so that we're stronger, set ourselves right, so we are in tune with the universe. And also on the collective level, we have a period to do it. And I see how we came together after the horrific death of the hostages at the beginning of Elul. And to me, it felt like a calling to all of us to come together and to see it as an opportunity to heal before we have to confront what is next. So we can only pray that in these weeks ahead, with a war looming over all of us, that there is an opportunity for all of Israel to find some unity and to return to hold on to our highest ethics and moral considerations and the type of compassion and love that we've always held hand in hand with our tremendous strength and courage and creativity and inspiration. And knowing that we have both of those together, it can feel that God is truly with us as we go out there. And our prayer is that when we do have to face enemies, that we do so with those high aspirations and that strength and that unity, following our millennia-old values, and that God will help us be successful in our going out and our coming homes. Shabbat Shalom.